My guest today is Ujwal Velagapudi. Ujwal runs a vending empire called UV Holdings with thousands of machines, which does multiple seven figures in free cash flow. Thanks a lot for coming to the HoldCo Builder show, Ujwal.
Thank you, Mick. Appreciate you having me on.
So let's start with your early days. You've posted on Twitter that I've had a holding company since before I knew what it was 9 years ago. I just wanted multiple passive income streams. It was called my job, real estate, and then slowly bought the bar, gym, etc. Can you tell us about your journey as an entrepreneur and how you got started as an entrepreneur?
So right out of college, I had actual full-time salary. I wasn't working on minimum wage anymore. So I was trying to figure out, where do I put this extra cash? I was living pretty frugally, very frugally, and saving up whatever I could. So I was trying to figure out, where can I invest? And I'm from the city of Detroit, or I'm from the Detroit suburbs, and I realized that the city of Detroit had filed for bankruptcy. It was the largest municipality bankruptcy, I think, in the United States at the time. And so I was like, okay, let's go and get some real estate. That's what adults do, it seems. They go and invest in real estate. That's what I would hear either on TV, or I had a couple of friends that were like putting that in my ear. So anyways, I started looking to buy a piece of property as a rental. And long story short, over the course of about 9-10 months, I was looking from suburbs that I grew up in, decent parts of the city, and then all the way to the city of Detroit, where these were just very impoverished neighborhoods, some of the worst streets in the city and probably the country. And I bought my very first piece of property. It was 20 grand cash. And from there, that started it, where I grew that to dozens of commercial units. These were all commercial buildings, little strips, or mixed use. So I grew that to dozens of units, and then also had my day job. And then I would purchase these buildings on Craigslist. And so I loved Craigslist, so I would spend a lot of time on Craigslist, and I actually stumbled upon a pizza shop, and that led me to exploring what buying a business would be. I was like, oh, wait, the progression from me looking at real estate in the suburbs to the city of Detroit was like 1/10 of the price, but 3 times the cash flow. It made no sense. It was such a great deal. And then for businesses, it was maybe half the price or a third of the price of real estate, but you made 3-4 times the cash flow. So because I was looking at deals that were a 1x or 2x cash flow multiple. This was back in 2014, 2015. So it was just crazy to me. And so that intrigued me enough to go and explore that opportunity. And about a year and a half after my first pizza shop visit, that was my first site audit, my first meeting with a seller that I've ever done. From there, I closed about a year and a half, nearly 2 years later, on a small sports bar. And then I still had my real estate portfolio. I still had my day job. And then from there, I went on to buy a small franchise gym, and then an e-commerce business, an FBA business. And so throughout that whole process, I was working my full-time day job. I was self-managing my real estate. And then I had my bar, I had my gym. So for me, looking back at it today, I'd say, yeah, that was basically a holding company, right? I mean, yeah, you don't have an actual entity governing and governing all the businesses or governing your job, but it was a portfolio of small cash flowing jobs / businesses. And that's exactly what I wanted back then. I thought of myself as an investor. I go to my job, I work 40 hours, no more, and get a paycheck, go tend to my businesses, and collect cash, and that's it. And so I'm basically replicating the same thing today, except with a lot more knowledge, a lot more experience, and just at a much higher level.
Fascinating. Thinking back, where does this drive or passion came from? I mean, having this day job, making good money. Why did you decide to invest all your free time into? I guess it was your free time, finding the next investment opportunity.
I think it might go back to my very early years where I was just going around and hunting for opportunities. As a little kid, I was selling arts and crafts for pennies. I was selling my homework for a pack of gum or a buck. I was trading or selling Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and then to all the way to selling Air Force Ones on eBay and Craigslist, making a couple bucks there, to selling cars on Craigslist. So it was just, I think, just a hustle mentality and that mindset that I kind of grew up with, and I liked it. I liked purchasing a great deal. I liked the negotiating process, and then all the way to the sale when I ultimately made a couple bucks on that opportunity. So I think it was just small little ripple effects that um, just kept compounding, and I don't know what it was with that first property, but I got hooked. I loved it. I had to figure things out. I This was a completely brand new territory. I did my own legal contracts. I was dealing with tenants in a very different environment that I'd grown up in. It was just so exciting to me that I just loved it and have loved exploring every single new business that I've been a part of.
While going through this journey and acquiring different businesses, did you have any moments where you were like, it's too hard, it's not worth it, and I should probably just uh, keep grinding on my day job?
No, never. Thankfully, I've never had that. I think, which tells me genuinely that I would do this regardless of whatever financial output it may have. I could lose every penny I have today, and I would still be doing the same thing because that's what I always think about. Because, like, this is why I know that I don't do it for the money. Because, uh, what was it? Just nearly 7, 8 years ago, I had that small portfolio, but I was making very little in relative to what I make now, and yet I was doing it because I was excited. I was passionate about it. I enjoyed it. I liked buying businesses, operating my businesses, and today I do the same thing. It's just more zeros, right? But I did it back then. I'll do it today, and I'll do it, decades from now. Where even if I have more zeros or if I have less zeros, for me, it's just it just really excites me to be in business, learning, buying new businesses, looking at new opportunities. That's what truly fascinates me.
Yeah, I'm asking because I was there's a Netflix show at the moment, a documentary called Class Act. It's about a French entrepreneur called Bernard Tapie, and
Hmm.
he ended up being acquiring Adidas. At one moment, he was CEO of Adidas. Then he sold it, and now he's unfortunately dead. But he one moment he acquired a French football club, Marseille, and this documentary is about when he got started, and he tried so many various things, mostly failed, and then he found an opportunity that you can acquire like distressed companies for one
Hmm.
franc, which is pretty much like a $1. So from
Yeah.
there he got started, but it shows really well how hard it actually was, and many times his parents and his girlfriend said to him that it's not worth it. And one moment he pretty much gave up. He went back to working for his father, being a plumber. And then his girlfriend said to him that I don't recognize you because you had all those dreams, goals, but you just gave up. And then he got drunk, and then he found this opportunity that you can buy a business for 1 franc, and that's how he got started. That's why I was asking, because you said the same thing. You had your day job, and then you started those.
Hmm.
It didn't raise any money. You just started buying those properties and sports bars, and you went from there.
Yeah. No, I never looked back on it. It was, um, yeah, actually, never once had a thought, not even a thought to even think of going back or doing anything. I mean, you have some of those thoughts, like, what if I lose everything? What if the world ends tomorrow? And what would I do then? But I still would be doing the same thing. I would just start back at zero and get into an opportunity, maybe buy something for $1, a distressed asset, and get into that opportunity and start back from the ground. But never would go back to a job or anything. The only thing that I did do was I probably could have left my day job within 3 years after college. That's when I bought my first business, and I did quit because I wanted to go to the Rio Olympics at that time. I quit my job. I was buying my biggest property, and I had quit my job because I didn't have any more vacation days to go to the Rio Brazil Olympics. And then I ended up getting another job and working 2 more years. But that was the only time I worked an extra 2 years that I didn't necessarily need to. But um, besides that, I never had a thought to go back.
You mentioned Rio Olympics. What sports were you doing?
No, not just as a spectator. Just as a
Ah,
spectator.
okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you
yeah.
were a part-time
No,
athlete as well,
no,
professional.
no. I wish. I wish. But
Okay. So now, can you share more about the journey of you buying this sports bar and from there ending up buying a lot of vending machines, amusement vending, because there are so many, I would say, thousands of different opportunities and niches to pursue. Why vending machines?
yeah, no, good question. I don't have the good answer for that, but I started with the sports bar, and that was my first business. I learned the most out of it. I did it while I had my day job. I did everything with a liquor license. I renovated the place. I had employees. I've never drank in my life, so I had to figure out how that world works. I used to work at a couple bars back in college, working security, but I really knew nothing about being behind the bar, how to operate it, take care of my customers, none of that. And so that was a great experience, but I still had my day job. So I would open up after 5 o'clock, close down at 2 a.m., go back to work the next day, and would do that and would open it up for special events. And so that really taught me how to operate a business. And because I had to, because my job required me to go to Europe or go to Mexico, I had to kind of give up control and delegate that. And so I had someone overseeing the bar for me. And once I was able to do that in a similar way that I did it with the real estate portfolio, that's when I was looking again, stumbled across Craigslist, and I was like, oh, there's this gym. I saw it last year. It was like 4 times the price. Now it's a fraction of the price because there was an LA Fitness that opened up right next to it, which is a large chain gym. And so it crushed some of the financials. So I'm like, wait, that's not bad. That's not a bad deal. So I explored that. And then within a month of me looking at it, I actually closed on the deal, which was extremely fast at the time. Um, and then from there, this whole business buying thing got started, or it was incepted in my head from digital business acquisitions. So I don't know how I stumbled across this. I think I must have been on Biz by Sell and seen a listing or something along those lines. And I saw, oh, you can buy a website. And there was a platform called Empire Flippers, and went and talked to the guy. The owner actually picked up and he told me about it, about some of the listings. I checked out some of the listings, and then eventually just started listening to their podcast. And 5 years later, that was still in my mind. I was like, okay, I did the physical thing with buying the real estate. I did the physical thing with the sports bar and the gym. What about this website stuff? My very, very first business back in middle school, I actually started a little website with a bunch of links to gaming websites. I made like 10 cents off of it. So that always intrigued me. Listening to their podcast intrigued me about how I could also buy a business. And I never pursued it back then. I ended up buying the sports bar instead. So I resumed that search, and I was like, all right, let me go take a look at these online businesses. I eventually ended up buying a e-commerce business, an FBA brand. It had about 800 SKUs selling women's apparel. So hats, gloves, shirts, bags, things like that. And from there, I quit my day job, eventually sold all 3 businesses, and then bought a software consulting business that was about a 15, 16-year-old company at the time. in Texas. So I relocated. I moved out and moved out to Texas for that a couple of years. Um, and then COVID kind of destroyed that business. And then right afterwards, I bought a virtual assistant agency that had been around for about 5, 6 years. Then I bought it. Um, I still currently have that. And then that was my small one. That was the one that, I kept looking back. I said, with all these four prior businesses, I lost a couple bucks. I made a couple bucks. I don't seem to be doing this very well. Why am I losing money? I lost money on the e-commerce deal. So I really wanted to test my skill set, my knowledge. Could I actually buy a good business? And so that's what buying this VA agency was. I bought it on one of the online aggregators, on one of the online platforms on MicroAcquire, and I made sure, am I diligencing this the right way? Am I sourcing it the right way? Diligencing it, vetting the seller, vetting the operations, vetting the technology, vetting the actual core business. And I closed, and so far it's been successful, and it's been a good acquisition. So I did that so that I can get my confidence up, essentially, that I know that I can actually buy a good business. And so after I did that, that's when I first got into the vending business. So that was a broker deal. I bought one of the businesses, and then as soon as I bought one of them, I was like, I'm done. This is a life-changing business. This is the biggest thing I've ever bought. Uh, this is making way more money than I'll ever need in my life. And about 2 days after I closed, seller comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got this guy. The word spread. Everybody knows that you bought me out. They want you to buy them out too." And so I guess a bunch of these guys were peers, because it's a small industry, peers of the seller were giving him a call saying, "Hey, this kid bought you out, can he buy me out too?" And so I had deal flow just ringing off the hook and all off market. And I was the biggest player in that area at the time, and then slowly bought someone else, and then bought a bigger competitor out, and eventually became one of the biggest in the region. It was a slow progression, but just unexpected mini roll up that ended up happening where I was located. Did not ask for it, did not even know about it, did not underwrite for it, did know anything about how that would work, but it was just kind of a very, very organic, natural way in how it's progressed.
These are big businesses. When doing those deals, how did you finance them?
So, dating all the way back, my first 5 businesses were all myself. And when I say myself, they're all cash. And only one of them had some sort of earnout component. Everything else was pure cash. And out of that cash, how did I get that cash? Most of it was directly from my other businesses cash flowing, or my day job cash flowing, or the sale of some of those assets. But my bar, my gym, um, some of the other businesses that I had to do, I ended up getting personal loans, P2P loans from websites called SoFi or Upstart. They had back then they would have these personal loans. They would just give out 35K or 50K if you filled out this, give your SAT scores and all this stuff. So I was able to get those loans or balance transfers on my credit card. They'll give you 12 months, 0% APR, and then after that it's like 24%. But yeah, SoFi, Upstart, my credit cards, and I stopped paying off my credit card. I would pay the minimum amount due and maxed out my credit cards. So I was maxed out on my credit cards, took the maximum amount from SoFi, Upstart, all these platforms. And so at 18 to 24% APR, I think 18 was one of my cheapest debt sources that I could get at the time. But for me, it was cash, right? The seller wants cash. That's my way of getting cash. I couldn't do any loans back then. I just wanted to be fast. I wanted to be nimble. I wanted to close within 30 days. So that's the only way I could do it. And that's the way I constructed those deals. So Then the larger deal, I cashed out everything at the time. I had almost no businesses. I just had one, and then eventually two when I bought the VA agency, and I needed to buy this bigger deal. And how I financed that, it was strictly through the SBA, and so they financed it. Got a I maxed the SBA out. I got a seller note. I put my own cash in, and that's how I was able to buy the first one. And then consecutively, the I bought four more in this current space in the vending space, and each one of those have not been a penny out of pocket, and so those have been 100% finance, either commercial debt or um, either commercial debt or financed by the seller themselves or the previous sellers that I had done with. So I went to the first couple of sellers and said, "Hey, I gave you this whole chunk of cash. You don't have anything to do, or you don't really have any other investments to put it towards, right? You've got all this money. How about you lend me the money, buying one of your former peers out? You know the industry, you like me, you know what I'm doing, you trust me. I could give you much better returns than whatever you could do in something else, and I will pay it off very quickly." So I was giving them like 13%, 18%, 20%. And then during COVID, I had met someone online, not Twitter, but another online platform, and developed a relationship with him and friendship over time. And when another acquisition came up, I needed cash for working capital, and so I reached out to him. He gave a loan, and so just like that, I pieced those together. It was all loans from investors, basically, or turned investors from relationships that I had from doing business with them previously, and that's how I've been able to finance these last four deals.
But those companies have had very great returns because you said the loan interest have been from 18 to 24. I mean, to pay those off, it has been the companies have been doing really well, right?
Yeah, and in my earlier days, those were 18 to 24%.
Hmm.
That could be a bit misleading because even if the business wasn't doing well, I still have to pay the loan, right? Because my credit card company doesn't care. I still have to pay them every month. Or some of these platforms, they don't care. I still have to pay. So where was that money coming from? Well, if let's say my e-commerce business, that didn't do too hot, so but I still needed to pay some of the cash that I borrowed from the balance transfer or whatever to buy that business, I was pulling it from the real estate that was cash flowing very well, or my day job that was cash flowing very well. So I was, stealing money from here to pay them and just making it work. So the overall portfolio was cash flowing very well, but I did make some poor decisions, operated poorly, and you know didn't do didn't do everything perfectly. So uh, it could have been much better, but overall the portfolio did pretty well.
When doing those deals, I mean, there is a due diligence. There is a what type of structure you're going to put together. Did you hire consultants, or you've been like a self learner, finding answers, reading,
Yeah,
watching videos?
it's been 100% myself, and no consultants. The very first vending one, I did hire an investment bank to go and perform a quality of earnings in person. And outside of that, I've never used any professional. For also the bigger vending one, I used an attorney to draft a contract, a purchase agreement, and then did not end up using it. But I created my own and then had her proofread it again. Um, so that was my only time using an attorney for acquisitions or sales, and the only time using a quality of earnings. But besides that, every other time, the diligence has been 100% myself, financially, operationally, legally, and then also the legal aspect of purchasing the business with all the contracts needed, or even when I sold all the contracts needed, it was through myself. I did sell one of the businesses through a broker. All the other sales have been off market. But yeah, outside of those professionals, it's always been myself. So learn. I've got a lot of scars to prove, all the mistakes that I've made and times that I've gotten burned. But it was all very slow progression. I would say in those first handful of businesses, I really had nobody to speak with or communicate, to share. Nobody I knew was really doing this. So the way I learned was just doing it by myself. Maybe I would Google some things, um, but it was just beyond, uh, you know, um, yeah, I just didn't have that peer network. And then finally got into like a mastermind group. Then that led me to Twitter and, interacting with folks there, learning there, then searchfunder.com. I found out about that world and interacting with a lot of folks from there. And so started to speak to more people in this world. I didn't know what M&A was. I didn't know what, any of these terms meant professionally. I was just kind of doing them. And so once I was able to uh, understand the professional side of things, oh, people actually do this for a living, and there's a proper way to do all of these things. That's when I educated myself a little bit more so that I could be a little bit more polished. But yeah, I started fundamentally just learning, doing all this, just figuring it out myself.
That's remarkable. Thinking back, I guess there are no regrets, but thinking back, do you think that sometimes, like, I wish I could meet some people who I met now earlier so I could do things faster, or you just really been enjoying the journey, learning things by yourself, and without doing this, you would not be where you are today?
I think so. I think that last statement for sure. For me, I not a school guy. I'm never going to go back to school. I can't learn in school. For me, I've always enjoyed physically doing this and whatever side hustle. I had 17 jobs in college, and I got fired from a lot of them, but it was for the curiosity. I loved experiencing different things. Was in a ton of organizations, so I've always enjoyed just figuring stuff out and doing it, touching it, feeling it. And so for me, I think just having that fundamental experience of myself figuring things out and making stuff up as I go, like that is the fundamental reason for why I'm still able to do what I'm doing today. Had I been professionally taught or mentored at a much younger age, I don't know if I would have had quite the interest or drive or experience to be able to say, hey, I haven't been just, I didn't just read a book, or I haven't just been taught by a mentor or a teacher. No, I actually experienced this. I lost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And as a result, I am never doing that again, you know? So I think there's definitely a huge difference between actually experiencing it and living the mistakes versus being taught the mistakes and being taught what's right versus wrong. And so I'm grateful that I've actually experienced all those things, or a lot of those things, and have hopefully going to be learning from them.
And I'm sure it gives you a lot of confidence about the future as well. That no matter what happens, I can simply figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can lose everything tomorrow, and I'm monetarily, I'm very frugal anyway. So yeah, for me, I'm at a no loss situation. I just love the process and continuously learning.
Many years ago, when I'm 30 now, but I think it was 10, 11 years ago, I was reading a book, and there was one saying which you mentioned as well, like having the ability to figure things out. I think when you really think about this and when you really take it seriously, you actually are capable of figuring everything out. Whenever you need something, you just call to a person, watch a video, or go do it yourself. So it's
Mm.
great that you brought it out. Now, what about today? Size of the business, size of your holding company. Tell me how much you want to share, how much can you share? What level are we talking about? How many vending machines in the portfolio? And what is the how many employees do you have, and how is it?
So when I say amusement vending, this is jukeboxes, arcade games, like the little claw machines or the basketball games, the shooting games, darts, golden tees, all those games that you would see. And then we've also got photo booths, pool tables. We have a billiards division and ATMs. And so we primarily put these at bars, restaurants, movie theaters, hotels, um, clubs, you know, basically any place that would cater to kind of a foot traffic sort of clientele. And our customers are those establishments, and the end consumer is are the patrons who actually walk into those establishments and play the games. And we've got about a few thousand throughout hundreds and hundreds of locations. Um, and as far as headcount, we've got over a couple dozen employees, less than a few dozen. I don't know the exact number, to be completely honest, but it's over 25, less than 35. And we've got contractors as well that we utilize time to time. Um, so the whole team, yeah, it would be a few dozen. Um, and then technically two different companies, and but operations are we've got quite a bit going on, because when you think of the number of games, the number of locations, the number of folks needed to actually keep those up and running, it's quite significant. And so the way we service 365 days a year: Christmas, New Year's, whatever holiday, you name it, we're there. COVID, we're there. Um, and so we go all the way up till about 10:30 at night, sometimes even later. So, um, we're one of the few companies that can actually genuinely say, yeah, we'll actually service you 365 days a year throughout the night. Because if you think of a bar with a jukebox that goes down, a bar with no music is not a place where people want to stay. So if you're hanging out 8, 9, 10 o'clock, or even later, and the music goes out, it's dead. People are walking out. Your business is lost, and the customer is going to be pissed, yelling at you. And so those are situations that, bam, on the phone with tech support and trying to figure that situation out, or we're physically going in there and rectifying the situation. And same goes for money outages in an ATM or a big piece of equipment. So with our scale, we're able to do that. With our scale, we're able to provide the right types of games and equipment that our customers want. With the scale that we have, with thousands of machines, and then I've got hundreds of machines just in our warehouses and storage units alone, that you need this for this bar that's opening up, or this for this movie theater that's opening up. We've got the equipment. We'll buy a onesie twosie new piece of equipment, but for the most part, we've got a bunch of equipment that's just constantly in rotation. And so, yeah, right now we're one of the biggest companies in our industry. We are pretty new. I've only started buying about 2.5 years ago, so been slowly creating a small wave within the industry, at least in my region. There's definitely much bigger players in town that have been around for over 100 years, family-owned businesses, or small firms that have gotten into the mix, small PE firms or family offices that have gotten into it. But for right now, it's going pretty well, and I do have an intent to continue to buy out the remaining competition, and really be a much larger company than we are today.
But what about you? How does your day look like? How do you manage it all?
Really goes in waves. So when I bought for example, going all the way back to the way I would manage things, it was my very first business. I had my day job, I had my real estate portfolio that I was self-managing, and my bar. And so I would work my day job. I would take calls from my tenants, or schedule calls for my tenants for my real estate during my job. And then at night, I would clock out at 5 and go to my bar, open that up, maybe run an errand to go visit one of my properties in the city, and then come back, close down the bar. And so that's how I would do it. But then eventually I was traveling internationally. I had to oversee the bar from my phone. I had to oversee the properties from my phone. And so I got to a point where I had my day job, my bar, my gym, and my real estate portfolio. And I was coming back at 5 o'clock every single evening, bored out of my mind because I had automated all those operations. And I was, before I quit, like the last year almost, I was extremely bored. I was just coming back home outside of my job. I had nothing else to do because everything else I was managing from my phone. I pretended, even though my businesses were within 20 or 30-minute drive from my house, I never went because I pretended. I wanted to pretend as if I was out of state or international because I wanted them to operate by themselves. I wanted them to be self sufficient without me having to babysit or me being paranoid to go and visit. So I pretended as if, hey, this is hands off. I have to make this work. I have to figure this out. If I make a mistake, let me make a mistake when I'm actually 20 minutes away. And that mindset really set the foundation for what I do today. For example, a little snapshot of this year, or like the vending businesses at a much larger scale. When I first bought the first company, I took over. I was the manager. I was in the business operating it. And then as these other opportunities came about, I had to go and inherit another operation. And so I had to move myself physically. So I uprooted myself. I moved there to take over that operation. But the first one, I had a manager that I had put in place. 6 weeks in, boom, he's hit the ground running, and I had to leave him and go to the other facility and get that one up and running. And so, as far as this year, for example, I had to fire one of my managers from one of the companies. And so I put myself back within the managerial role and doing day to day operations, and had gotten in a um, good manager to replace myself. And now I'm overseeing both of the companies within the vending space. And after about 4 months of her getting in place, and I've been hands off for about the last 6 months. I've been in Europe for a month. I've been in Asia or Africa for a couple of months. And during those times, I really work about 2, 3 hours a week at most. And a lot of that is just quick email responses or a quick phone call or texting with my managers, zero communication with the rest of the team. If I'm if they reach out to me, I'm 100% available. There's nothing like I'll be on vacation whenever. Call me anytime. But I have no issues with that. I would love to help. But as far as my actual involvement and me forcing myself there, it's very, 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 very little. And so I've been able to really, really extract myself this year. And that really goes back to how my mindset was in managing the businesses in the early days because I had to. I was forced to do that because of my day job. Now uh, I'm able to extract myself because I want to buy that next company. I want to buy something in another industry. So, and build out the portfolio even more. So I know that I have to do that in order to continue to grow. And I trust and I give the full autonomy to whoever I've got in place.
So a little bit about the business because I don't exactly know how it works. Where does majority of your revenue coming from, and when doing sales, if you need to do sales, who are you selling your vending machines?
So we don't actually sell the equipment. All the
Eh,
equipment, all the assets are mine, and then we do a profit share.
mhm.
So we'll do a profit share with these locations. So like I was saying, we'll primarily put them at bars and restaurants. Uh, any place with a liquor license, essentially, will do very well. Uh, we'll go to movie theaters, resorts, hotels. Those places are really good. And so those are the primary establishments that we'll do put in our games for. And it's the best equipment, I would say, is really also dependent on the location. But for the most part, your more consistent ones are going to be the jukeboxes. That's going to be a good chunk of your revenue. The ATMs are going to be a good chunk. Those are staple pieces of equipment. And then you got other pieces that will fill out depending on the location. The claw machines for the kids, You'll have certain shooting games, racing games. You'll have like, let's say, a Halo or Godzilla or Jurassic Park or some of these larger pieces of equipment. And for example, if we go into a bar, I call it my starter kit, and a typical bar, a sports bar that'll open up, and it's not crazy big, it's not too small. I'm going to go in there and walk in with my basic kit, which will involve a jukebox, an ATM, a pool table or two, golden tee, which is the golf game, and a dartboard. And so electronic darts. And we provide, our company does leagues. So we run pool leagues and dart leagues for our customers to provide more customers for them. And so they're excited because we're one of the few companies that actually have a legitimate charter under those organizations and run proper official national level leagues. And so that's typically who we cater to and the typical setup of what we would provide. If it's a more family friendly restaurant, we might take away, we might not put in the pool tables and we might go with just a few of the claw machines and have a few other pieces of the games. Maybe more towards a smaller demographic or a younger demographic. But if it's a resort, then we'll put a whole bunch of arcade games. We'll put really catering to mid single digit age group all the way till teens, late teens, and the young adults, and certain things that are family friendly or applicable for everybody as well.
How sticky are those contracts or collaborations with your partners and customers, and how much competition there actually is on those locations?
It's all a relationship business, right? It's 100% relationship business, and that's what I've inherited from the guys that I've bought and work with. Is it's 100% about your service and the relationships. You have to meet these people, you have to talk to them, because these are decades old relationships that I inherited and took over. So some of these customers have been around for 20 years, 30 years since they've started the companies. And so it's purely about the relationship. However, when they sell, not if, but when they eventually sell the bar, that's going to be a new relationship with the new owner. It could be someone in their family, or it could be some complete new person. And so that's something that needs to be reestablished. We need to continue to provide that same level of service, and if not, improve it. And so, but within our business model and this industry's business model, we take the risk of 100% of the capex. We take the risk of not being profitable when we put this equipment out. We're dropping 50, 100K worth of equipment, if not more, at a single location, and hoping and praying that it's going to yield some money. And so for us, it's a risk. For the customer, they can call somebody else up tomorrow and just say, hey, get your machines out and put somebody else's in. We do have contracts, but it's pretty tough to enforce, especially with these small businesses, and for such a small amount, it's not something that I like to do. If you really want to get out and go somewhere else, and if we've not done the level of service that we should have been, then yeah, that's on us. We need to provide you better service. So, but as far as competition, there is a good amount of competition, mostly from the smaller operators. So if you're a one-man show, you'll have your pros and cons. If you're really good, you will work to get more business. You will work to get, maybe 20, 30, 50 customers versus our hundreds and hundreds. But you're able to tend to them a little bit more personally. You are the owner and the technician and the collector and everything, customer support, everything. So you will do a much better job inevitably than whatever number of employees that I have. And so that's my responsibility, to be able to say, with the scale that we have, we need to exceed how a one person company can do it, because we have 24/7 hotline that you can call in. We'll have guys 365 days a year, so that even if you're on vacation, it doesn't matter. We have someone else night duty that day or holiday duty. We have more capital to be able to invest into different games. We have more cash to be able to invest into different aspects of the business. We have different operations, different parts that are in stock, more equipment in stock, all those things, availability with trucks to be able to logistically move and do all those things. So that's what we tout when we're going into a customer saying, like, this is what we can do, this is what we have. We're doing all this and reinvesting in the business to be able to take care of you better. And so the people who understand that do tend to go with us. Once in a while, you'll see them drift off to a one person operator or different companies, and eventually they do come back. But yeah, there definitely is a decent amount of competition within the business because it's an age old industry. People have been doing it for years and decades, and if they're still in the business, then they're still knocking on doors and trying to take some business from you.
You seem to living a good life, and you seem to be very happy. 1 month in Europe, 2 months in Asia. What about the challenges? Do you have any challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say earlier this year, having to let go one of the managers and then taking the operations back myself to go back into the day to day. And so that was a challenge. And then getting the right person in place to take over again. And then throughout these last few months, as I've been stepping away and away and away from the business, I've seen that I've really taken my eye off the ball. And so one of the big things that I've noticed is margins in this environment, in this inflationary environment. And so margins have decreased. And so that's one thing that I was really focusing on, extracting myself from the business and focusing on that next company, that next industry that I want to pursue, and another division within the portfolio. And that's what I was excited about. That's what I love to do, the acquisitions, and to do what I've done with this vending space and my prior businesses. I want to replicate that in another industry and have a few industries that's going to really diversify the portfolio. But I've also noticed that I've really taken my eye off the ball. There are certain things that I have a perspective on that my managers running each one of the companies do not, that I did not do my job during that time frame. Things that I was tracking, things that I was watching, but I just didn't jump back in and make it a priority, a big enough priority to say, hey guys, we have to work on this. For example, margins. This is something that's crucial. We need to rectify this. Let's go jump in today instead of December when I'm doing, 2024 planning. That's when I jumped into it. So I think one of the lessons learned within that is just I am a one man show. I am the one man back office. There's no other person. So I am technically the CEO and running my businesses, but then I'm also looking at being the M&A team to buy the next division, the next company. And so I think I need to definitely spend more time in prioritizing my current operations until I have a proper full-time individual that can oversee the actual portfolio operations, a CEO, COO, or someone of that nature. So yeah, we definitely have challenges. One of the challenges within this industry is the CapEx. So just going to a trade show recently, the cost of these games have skyrocketed, not unlike cars, computers, because they all use some sort of electronic component, right? In all these games, the technology that's needed to develop them, even if they are ultimately being manufactured overseas and coming to the States, all these manufacturers have just really cut our industry out of the mix, and they cater more towards the FEC community, which is the family entertainment centers, which are, at least in the US, the Chuck E. Cheese's, the Dave and Buster's of the world, and those larger amusement facilities where all they have are games. And those games are 20, 50, 100K, 150K for the virtual reality stuff. Very, very big ticket items. I can't take a driving game that's as big as my my home here, my studio apartment, and go stick that into a bar. It just doesn't make sense. They're not going to have the space. It's not going to. You can't charge someone $15 at a sports bar. It does not make sense. Um, so the equipment that is being produced is not being catered to my community, my type of businesses, and the games that are being, I guess, given out to my community uh, is they've still skyrocketed. Games used to be a few $1,000s. Now they're high single digits to in the teens. So it's extremely, extremely expensive. And the ROI is just not there. There's not a single piece of equipment out there that I can put out at an average bar or an average location and at, let's say, $8,000, $9,000 and make my money back. I will never, ever make my money back. And so those are some of the challenges that I'm facing where it's how do you satisfy the customer yet uh, not spend too much on capex, and because new capex investments rarely have an ROI unless in select locations for the select piece of equipment. So how do you extend the life of your existing equipment by servicing it better, taking care of the components, upgrading the graphics, upgrading the monitors, upgrading certain components. Um, and then how do you change some of the fee structures to your customers so that you're ultimately increasing the price to your customers. It used to be always 50-50, but there are fees that we inherit that we've never levied on to the customer. And so those are things that we're starting to take a look at that we have to do for us to remain viable and to continue to have those same margins. And so um, those are some of the challenges I would say the industry is facing, where some of the smaller companies, they're definitely feeling a pinch where capex is way too high. And just to give you a simple example, a basketball game, let's say it'll cost 10 grand and we put it for $1 a play at a bar. $1 a play, and we take 50-50 of the profit. $1 a play means that we will break even at $20,000. That means 20,000 plays. That's assuming we're not factoring in for sales tax, service calls, parts. I mean, if you're playing the game for 20,000 times, imagine the number of repairs that it's going to need to have. So not even factoring for that, it needs to play 20,000 times. And by the end of it, you're still not technically broken even. So you probably need 25 to 30,000 plays or dollars to actually just break even. And then you start to make a profit after that. And then how many years is that? If it's at a hot place, it could be just a couple years. If it's at an average place, it may never happen. And so those are some of the calculations that I'm doing where, okay, I can raise my price to the customer at $2 a play. I mean, those are little things that I can do that still decreases the time, but it's going to decrease the volume of folks that are playing it as well. So, I mean, so those are some of the calculations that I'm doing with the new equipment, where the industry overall just does not make sense for some of the new equipment until it comes back down to reality, where the people in my industry can actually afford to purchase it and have a positive ROI, or those expenses are going to have to be relayed to the customer where, hey, customer, I can't give you a penny. I've got to take 100% of this profit for it to make sense on this piece of game. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing as an aggregate in the industry.
So knowing those challenges and facing those challenges on day-to-day basis, how big do you think and believe you can build this company, and do you even want to grow this business, or are you just happy where it is at the moment?
We're definitely still growing. We are adding locations every single day. There's always like a dozen or 2 dozen that we're always constantly working on. We're adding net new locations. So we're absolutely growing. Absolutely do want to grow, want to take over our local territory completely. And I think there's still a solid amount of market share left within the region that I'm in. And How big? I think definitely eight-figure EBITDA,
Hmm.
uh, and I think that's attainable. A couple of acquisitions, few acquisitions away, and just organic growth. So I don't think that's too far off in the next maybe less than 5 year time span. I also know the challenges and I also know some of the risks. And so is that something that I would be as aggressive as I was 2 years ago? No. Flat out, no. Uh, but knowing all those things, knowing because every industry has its issues, every industry has its concerns, every single business, every single industry. So knowing what I know now as intimately as I do about my industry, I will still continue to grow it. I will still continue to pursue new acquisitions. It's just going to be at my terms. It's going to be a lot more aggressive. If you want to sell to me, I'm going to be your only suitor, and I am going to have my terms. It's got to be very favorable for me to continue pursuing it because I know I'm going to give the best to your customers, give the best to your teams, upgrade everything that they're doing operationally. And put in my culture, put in the way that I do things, and that's inherently I will take on a whole new different set of OpEx that they've never had to deal with before, just because of the way that I'm doing things. And so, with all that being considered, yeah, I'll definitely be pursuing it further, but um, with my terms. And then, in conjunction with that, I would like to pursue another industry altogether so that I can diversify what I've got going on. Maybe it's a complementary industry that I can cross sell products. Maybe I can go into a bar and restaurant and sell them another service, and they're already comfortable with us because we're financially in bed with our customers. We actually give them money, so they like us as opposed to asking for money. So maybe we can go in with another product or service that we can cross sell to them, and that's kind of what I'm thinking about as far as next industry goes.
So a bit more personal question. You mentioned by acquiring this business which you are running today, you achieved your you achieved your goal or goals, and you seem to be traveling a lot. You seem to have a lot of free time. But what motivates you today, and what do you want to accomplish next?
I think since day one, the one main constant throughout all this has been just my curiosity and my desire to learn. That's why I've dabbled in 6 different industries now in some obscure stuff and found myself in some obscure parts of the country or world. And that's what fascinates me. So I just legitimately love to learn about different businesses, different industries, different the people surrounding it, the regulations surrounding it, the cultures, the operations, the technical aspects of the business. I am truly wanting to be a jack of many trades, and I do not really care to master anything except for learning about businesses. That is one thing that I would love to be constantly improving upon. But what I want to be going, so I've wanted to buy an international business for a while. I've looked at some opportunities in Mexico, Central America, Europe, India. Um, it's always like I want to do business internationally. I want to have an operations. I want to have a physical business in another country. So that's something that I would that's my next step. That's my next challenge. Because doing business in America, it's relatively simple, but being a foreigner and operating companies internationally, that's a whole new challenge. You're dealing with different people, different cultures, the regulations involved. Um, do they even have laws, or is it kind of a lawless society in terms of if you're going into a developing nation? You know, a lot of things are out the door in those environments, and so that's exciting. That's super fascinating for me because I think I can learn so much more. It's a completely new set of challenges, um, and so that's something that I'm really excited for and something that I absolutely will be doing. I have put it off because I think that's something that I should probably be pursuing when I know that I can actually lose the money that I invest just because of a foreign investment is pretty high risk, especially in some of the locations that I want to test it out at. So if there's a good operating partner, if there's a good opportunity that I can wholly own an entity myself and it's exciting enough, then absolutely I'll do it. But I've put it off for now. I've stopped looking at international opportunities just because I know that that's probably something that I should pursue when I can absolutely lose all the cash that I invest in those environments, just because of the high risk nature, especially in the locations that I would like to invest in. But that's definitely something that I see in the near future, definitely less than the next few years. So, but ultimately, I want to have a portfolio of companies globally of sizable nature, and something where I do have a proper executive team and M&A team and operations team at the holding company level. And I truly want to be the owner. I don't think I'm the best operator. I'm not the best at M&A. I'm not the best at any of these things. But for me, I want to selfishly be able to dabble and to be able to learn within each one of these buckets that I'm investing in.
Time flies. Let's wrap up with the famous five. How old are you?
I am 32.
Favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence Others.
Married, single, kids?
I am single, but definitely looking. So if you know anybody, let me know.
What car do you drive?
An E46 M3. It's a 2002 BMW M3 stick.
What's the best investment advice you've ever got?
One that I've gotten, but if I was to give one, it would definitely be to kind of what we were talking about earlier, to just do it and just figure it out. That's been the most exciting for me. And that's where I've actually learned the most and made the most number of mistakes. So I was too ignorant, too foolish, too naive, too oblivious. But I just started doing something, making a bunch of mistakes, and just really learned from there. But that's probably the biggest advice that I would give anybody, is to just go, jump in the deep end and just figure it out and start swimming.
Perfect. And last one, where can people find you?
On Twitter, Ujwal Velagapudi, or at Ujwal Velagapudi is definitely the best way. You can DM me or reach out to me there.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ujwal. I'm sure this is a big motivation for many people. You're 32 with no previous experience in vending machines, or in not have experience in doing massive deals before actually doing those deals. What I mean is you haven't learned from anyone. You just went into it yourself and you just did it. So I think it's a big motivation for myself and many others. So again, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks so much, Mick. Appreciate you having me on.